What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Kevin with Optimized Essentials, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing semen retention and wet dreams, okay? Do they count? Why does it happen? And all the other good stuff. I'm going to be drawing upon my almost 3 years of experience cumulatively of semen retention and nofap, and then 2 pieces of content. One is called The Practice of Brahmacharya by Sri Swami Sivananda, supposedly, you know, a well-known monk or brahmachari in the Hindu, Indian religions. And then another one from Food Yogi, which I read bits and pieces of before, about the dangers of practicing celibacy, okay? So, this topic of the day was inspired by someone who commented on one of my YouTube videos, and he was talking about wet dreams and semen retention. So he says, could you please make a video again on semen retention about wet dreams, why I have them, and how to avoid them / deal with them? I have a serious problem right now. I'm getting wet dreams every 1 or 2 weeks on my nofap journey. I feel so bad after them. I am nearly falling into a depression on the day I had the wet dream. I already tried so many things to avoid them, but it's like when I sleep on my stomach for 5 minutes, I have a wet dream. I feel like this is ruining my whole energy. I hate it. Now, 2 things pop up into my mind. Number 1, he says, I have tried so many things, right? Let me see. I already tried so many things to avoid them. That makes me wonder, what have you tried, right? What have you tried? I'm curious to know if you're watching this. And then also, but it's like when I sleep on my stomach for 5 minutes, I have a wet dream. Now, this guy talks about basically what he talked about in his comment. But from my experience, wet dreams occur because of 2 things, all right? Number 1, improper eating, improper diet. And then number 2, excessive sexual energy, excessive jing buildup, okay? Now, not just to validate my own opinion, I wanted to look into other valid opinions where people have actually done semen retention for prolonged periods or have done celibacy for prolonged periods, so that I can kind of match and distill the core principles behind why wet dreams occur and different viewpoints, so that we can get the best answer for you possible, okay? Because it's not just enough for my experience, we have to match it up to someone else's, okay? Okay, so let me read from first the well-known monk, Sri Swami Sivananda. This is chapter 11, or chapter 19 actually, in the practice of brahmacharya, okay? This is the section where it says, you can't probably really see it, so I'll just read it to you. Difference between physiological pollution and pathological pollution. Now, what he talks about in terms of pollution, it's like, right, we pollute, we kind of ejaculate. Some of the words he uses is very technical, and it's really hard to pronounce, so if I butcher it, I apologize, but he uses difficult terminology that I don't really see the point of, okay? Like spermatoria or spermatoria, like diarrhea, but the sperm version or ejaculation version of diarrhea. So he says, spermatoria is involuntary seminal discharge, nocturnal discharge, night pollution, sapna dosha, wet dream are all synonymous terms. Ayurvedic doctors call this disease sukra mega, okay? This is due to the evil habits in youth. In severe cases, discharges also occur in daytime. The patient passes semen along with urine during micturition. Micturition, which I looked up, was basically, you know, urination, right? I don't get it. If there is occasional discharge, you need not to be alarmed a bit. Meaning, if there's occasional discharge of semen, you don't need to be alarmed. This may be due to heat in the body or pressure of loaded bowels or bladder on the seminal bags. This is not a pathological condition, meaning it's a physiological condition, okay? So again, he says in the next paragraph, night pollution is of 2 kinds, namely physiological and pathological pollution. In physiological pollution, you'll be refreshed. You should not be afraid of this act. You should not mind if the discharge of semen is very occasional. You need not worry about it. This is also a slight flushing of the apparatus or a periodical cleansing through a slight overflow from the reservoir in which the semen is stored up. The act may not be attended with evil thoughts, meaning if you have evil, rapish, like dark fantasy thoughts, I'm assuming. But when I've had semen or sexual, no, not semen, when I've had wet dreams in the past, I've had, sexual thoughts that accompany it. I would say half of the time. And then he says, okay, so whereas in pathological pollution, the act is accompanied by sexual thoughts. Actually, I kind of skipped the line. Let me go back. Okay, he says, this is also a slight flushing of the apparatus or a periodical cleansing through a slight overflow from the reservoir in which a semen is stored up. This act may not be attended with evil thoughts. The person may not be aware of the act during the night, whereas in pathological pollution, the act is accompanied by sexual thoughts. Depression follows. There is irritability, languishment, laziness, inability to work and concentrate. Occasional discharges are of no consequence, but frequent nocturnal pollution causes depression of the spirits, debility, dyspepsia, low spirits, loss of memory, severe pain in the back, headache, burning of the eyes, drowsiness, and burning sensation and urination or during the flow of semen. The semen becomes very thin. And then to wrap up with one sentence, he says causes and consequences. Wet dreams and spermatoria may be due to the various causes like constipation, a loaded stomach, irritation producing or wind producing foods, impaired thoughts, and long self done in ignorance. Now, some of the sentence I kind of tripped up a little bit because his words are kind of hard to flow with. But essentially what he's saying is this. There's two types of ejaculation, pollution. There is physiological, meaning it's a byproduct of your physiology. And then there's pathological, as in like there's a pathology, right? Physiology and pathology. Pathology is like the root cause and the disease kind of oriented, kind of spur, right? One is like natural, one is kind of dysfunctional kind of spiel, right? Now, in this case, or in this guy's case, he says, I have a serious problem right now. I'm getting wet dreams every 1 or 2 weeks on my nofap journey. I feel so bad after them. I'm nearly falling into a depression on the day after I had the wet dreams. Now, according to Sri Swami Sivananda, this sounds like he's having a pathological pollution, meaning, here's the thing, depression follows. There is irritability, languishment, laziness, inability to concentrate and work. Basically, there's negativity associated with excessive seminal discharge. Now, he says the causes, again, are a loaded stomach, meaning he says he sleeps on his stomach. He might, I don't know if you have like a really big gut or if you have a lot of junk, a lot of dysbiosis, bacterial imbalances in your gut, or you eat a lot of food before you go to sleep. But anything that irritates or produces wind will cause irritation of your prostate and then cause you to have an ejaculation. Now, let me tie this into my own experience, and then I'm gonna read the last food yogi's article. In my experience, the times when I had wet dreams, I remember the first time I had a wet dream, there was no sexual thoughts. I just woke up one night, I felt like I needed to pee, but it's like suddenly I just started to have like contractions, right? You know, like when you're like, oh, when you're about to bust your nut and then your prostate flutters and just like, basically you're having an orgasm and then you're ejaculating. Well, it felt like I needed to pee and then suddenly I just had an ejaculation. And the only downside that I felt was like, fuck, my streak, because this was my first time when I did it for 13 months. I remember I was like 6 months, 7 months in, and then maybe even later, like 8 months. And then I had my wet dream and I was like, God damn it. You know, I just had my wet dream. Like there goes 8 months of streak, but I didn't have any sexual thoughts. And then the next streak, when I did it for 11 months, I had like 2 or 3 wet dreams. And the ones, I would say half of them weren't sexual and then half of them were sexual. To times where it wasn't sexual, I had too much food before I went to bed, if it was a big meal, if I had a bunch of eggs or fats or cholesterol foods, that will excite my sexual organs and cause me to have like very high levels of testosterone and then sexual dreams during my sleep, meaning I would get super horny during my sleep, and then I'd be like looking for girls to have sex with in my dreams, and then because of that, I would like have a wet dream, okay? So there's that portion of it, meaning your subconscious mind is like, I'm horny, haven't had sex in a while, I'm gonna go find something, and since your mind can't separate something you're dreaming about physiologically with what's actually happening, you end up having a physical load that gets blown out. And then there's also the point where when I was just way too full and like my body was just maybe inflamed with all the foods that I was eating, and it irritated not my bowels but irritated my sexual glands and caused me to have a wet dream. And then finally, my two recent recollections of wet dreams was one when I ended my second streak, which was 13 months, and then one when I ended it after ayahuasca. When I ended it the 13 months, I remember I had cauliflower pizza with a bit of dairy, right? Conventional dairy. And that triggered me. Like I couldn't transmit my sexual energy. It just felt super dark and like I was super horny, you know? I was just like, what is this? I can't, no matter what kind of breathing, what kind of cold showers I did, I couldn't transmute it. And this is where I'll tie into what the food yogi says. He talks about like negative thought patterns imbued into the food. I think that's part of it. And then the other part of it is I was at massage therapy school for 8 months and I ended that. So around the same time I ended that, I was also nearing the end of my semen retention streak, or after I ended school, that's when I had the pizza. It was like following, like not too long after I had so it was like crazy. Whenever something ends, I feel like physiologically my body wants to purge, not just physically, like physical energy, but spiritual energy in the form of semen. So that's something I believe in, because the second time I had my ayahuasca ceremony, I had like 2 wet dreams pretty close by. The first one was I came back after ayahuasca after being a vegan and vegetarian. I had like pho. If you don't know what pho is, it's Vietnamese noodle, but it was homemade, and I had a bunch of beef tendon, bunch of like cartilage and like thick, like kind of like protein, right? So that same night, my body was just like, get this out of here, you know, kind of deal. And then the second time, which was like 2 weeks after ayahuasca, I had Chipotle, and then same with Chipotle, I had uncontrollable sexual energy. And now that I think about it, it's because when you do ayahuasca, like it purges you spiritually, it wipes all your negative impurities or your demons, all your chakras are open, all your energy centers are open. So when I bring in negative toxic food, it causes my sexual organs to become overly excited, and then it causes it to like, bleh, you know, explode, bleh, discharge, right? Involuntary. So to tie this all together with his point of view and my experience, and then I'll talk to you about food yogis, there's a physiological function that your body does when you either have too much buildup of jing, even in a healthy way, even if you eat really well and you do a lot of good stuff, there comes a point where your body can only build up so much jing and sexual energy, and there's only so much you can transmute, right? Your aura can only get so magnetic, so vibrant, so vital before you have an overflow where your body is like, discharge, clean out the pipes, you know? And then there's also the pathological pollution, which is basically more of like a dysfunctional disease-oriented, meaning you're doing something to your body that he calls as like irritation-producing or wind-producing foods, impaired thoughts, self-abuse, ignorance, constipation, a loaded stomach, meaning if you have a big gut, if you have a bunch of food, a bunch of undigested proteins, a bunch of shit in your gut, in your intestines, and you're like backed up, you haven't pooped in a while, and you're just toxic down in here. If you can't poop, if you can't discharge properly, guess how else your body's going to try and discharge? Through your semen. Because look, if you're sleeping on your stomach and you're like putting pressure on your sexual organs, and you can't fully poop or you can't fully evacuate, and you're toxic, and you're trying to do semen retention, you're trying to do nofap, your body is like, what the hell? Why am I trying to hold on to this toxic negative energy? That's why some people get supposedly prostate cancer when you do semen retention celibacy incorrectly, okay? Especially if you drink too much toxic dairy or like conventional dairy, you know, like the cheaper the dairy is, chances are the shittier it is, right? Try to go for raw dairy or at least pasture raised, grass fed, etc., etc. Okay. Okay, so that's what he said. Now let me read Food Yogis because I really like the way he articulated. I probably should have started with this one, but I like to wrap up, save the best for last. Okay, so this is what he says. Okay, let me pull up the article. Give me like 10 seconds. Please stand by. Oh wait, this was supposed to be for the other video, but I'm gonna read this anyways, okay? Right here. The yogic system is to use the semen to energize the body, and through the yogic asanas to raise the sexual force up the spine and not down to the genitals. However, there is only so much you can do before you hit overload and your body resorts to a nocturnal emission, wet dream. In parentheses, I would sometimes go for 6 months without having a wet dream. It was something we all hated to experience as monks, feeling that we failed in some way, but the body has to do what it has to do. And unlike masturbation, where semen is expelled through forced stimulation, when a monk has an accidental wet dream, they do not lose the force, prana, but just some excess liquid, sort of like a pressure cooker letting off steam. That basically sums it up in a nutshell. That's how I felt. When I went past 6 months, it was past 6 months, and I was like, fuck, I just had my first wet dream, and like I felt like I lost my streak. But this is where I talked about in the past. There's seminal fluid and sperm, right? The life force, sexual energy, spiritual energy is imbued in the sperm, in my opinion. I can't prove it, I don't know, that's just what I think. And then there's seminal fluid that carries it, right? When your body is releasing semen, or releasing, like purging as like a physiological function, it's only purging the seminal fluid as opposed to the spiritual energy that's imbued with the sperm or with the semen. So in a sense, if it's not consciously chosen, I don't think you lose life force energy. Does it count as relapsing? No. Does it count as you're losing semen? You're not retaining semen anymore? Technically speaking, yes, but I don't count that as my streak because I didn't choose to, you know? My body involuntarily chose to have a physiological function. You get what I'm saying? So two more things, and then we'll wrap up. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. So this is where he talks about how to practice celibacy the right way. This is the part where he talks about diet. He says diet is equally important. A diet consisting of foods that are rotting, spicy, or filled with negative thought patterns is disastrous for the brahmachari. For this reason, we never ate at restaurants, and we would only eat cooked food by the priests at our temples. The strictest monks among us would never eat after sunset. Hint, hint, after sunset, if it's too close to bedtime, too much food in the stomach causes pressure in the organs and blah, blah. Okay? The strictest monks among us would never eat after sunset, and be careful not to eat too many sweet foods, which would agitate the mind and senses. Back then, I was not aware of the dangers of commercial-grade milk. However, fortunately, I lived most of my monk years on farms where we only drank the excess milk from our protected cows. And then scroll down. In conclusion, if you are going to practice celibacy, you need to eat a pure diet of fruits and vegetables, think spiritual and uplifting thoughts, and most importantly, do yogic asanas to exercise the prostate and keep the energy flowing up. Now, I liked his synopsis a lot more. This guy, Sri Swami Sivananda, seems a bit more extreme. In a way, he's right about if you have sexual impaired thoughts accompanied with your ejaculation at night, that typically means you've been suppressing your sexual energy too much. You're not transmitting it properly. Maybe you're eating too much foods that have excitation in the food, or too much dark, negative, chaotic energy that causes you to have sexual dreams, and those sexual dreams cause you to ejaculate. There's that possibility. I think I like his explanation, right? The Food Yogis, where it's like a buildup. It's the steam. It's the pressure cooker letting off steam, right? So the way to conquer wet dreams is to regulate your diet, to not eat too much before bedtime, and to make sure, you know, if you're really wanting to be on the spiritual path, is to eat closer to vegan and vegetarian, which I disagree with. I mean, in terms of spirituality, yes, but as I mentioned in my previous video, I personally still eat meat. I do my best to eat the highest quality meat I can find, like pasture-raised, 100% grass-fed, organ meats, animals that weren't abused or treated inhumanely, because I like testosterone. I like to feel masculine, and I feel like if I eat too much vegan, vegetarian, even though I just had my green smoothie, right? It doesn't feel the same as if you eat animal products, okay? Now, I don't think it's necessarily bad if you have sexual thoughts or sexual fantasies during your sleep time. But yes, if you keep having wet dreams and they keep on being tied with sexual fantasies, that means a part of your subconscious is being repressed sexually. And if you're constantly having sexual thoughts and you're suppressing yourself and you're not having wet dreams, eventually you're going to have a wet dream. So that's something to keep in mind. Think about, what am I suppressing? Am I having too many thoughts? Am I eating too much? Is it time to end my streak? Sometimes it is time to end your streak. I don't know, or change up your diet. But all in all, again, what things you need to focus on? Check your diet. Try vegan and vegetarian for at least 2 weeks, at minimum 1 week, at least 2 weeks, and see if that cleaned up. Organic, raw, vegan, vegetarian, as much as you can. Move your body, do breath work, and you should be golden, okay? So in my next video, we're gonna talk about the best diet for semen retention, sexual transmutation, because he talks about the role of sex control, or the role of diet and sex control. So if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Comment down below so you can help boost the algorithm. And again, should have mentioned this earlier, if you're interested in learning more about semen retention, sexual transmutation, get my free version, my free guide. This will show with you the basics, the fundamentals of sexual transmutation. And if you want to invest in the full version, get the full version. That way you can really improve your knowledge and practice of sexual transmutation. It's Kevin with Optimize Essentials. I hope you guys have a good one. Peace.